For new writers who come to GrubStreet, they'll discover stories that they didn't know they had, and they'll also learn the stories of other people. That's what I hope for them. I hope that they have a journey of discovery, to look at this as not necessarily a destination, but as a place where you can begin.
It takes a real leap feeling like you can write. People often think, oh, what story do I have to tell? Or why should it be me? I think a lot of writers struggle with that. And I think what GrubStreet does is it says, why shouldn't it be you? Your story, your voice is vitally important.
What GrubStreet means to me is community. Creative writing is something that you do by yourself a lot of the time. And I think to have a space where a lot of different people with similar goals come together from a lot of different backgrounds and lived experiences and identities, I think that feels pretty special.
I love the new space. It is absolutely gorgeous. I'm most excited about all the writing nooks to meet up with people and write together.
I'm also excited about the cafe. That's another space where we can think about program and storytelling.
I am definitely most excited about the bookshop for the new space. I am very excited to see how many books I can spend my paychecks on.
The stage is amazing. We've never really had that before at GrubStreet. We've had to go somewhere else when we've wanted to do performances or have the students read, but now we can be here.
The space is artistic, and it's warm and joyful and playful, and it's also modern.
I feel like GrubStreet has made the new space feel like a home.
It really does just become about the people who make the space. And when we find our wings, the magic that is GrubStreet will just permeate this place as well. I have no doubt that that will happen.
Welcome! Thank you so much for joining us for Lit Up 2021. I'm Bethany Van Delft, and we are so excited to celebrate this wonderful community of writers that are going to call this new space home. Don't get me wrong, I loved the old space. It was cozy and charming, which we all know is realtor speak for super small, pre-war construction, no closets. But you walked in the door and there were writers in every nook and cranny putting their souls into words. It was just amazing. And you know, this place is going to be just as amazing. As you know, your generosity goes to so much here at GrubStreet. It funds programs for writers, for teens and adults. It provides for fellowships. I mean, it allowed us to have this amazing space. We're so grateful that you are joining us for this half hour, and we have got such a great program for you. You're going to hear from Grub writers. You're going to see Ashley C. Ford present an award to Roxane Gay. Oh my gosh, I'm fangirling a little bit. Our goal tonight is to raise $175,000, and we are well on our way. We'll post a link in the chat so you can show us how generous you are. Bonus! If you give tonight, we'll enter your name to win a box of books written by our very own GrubStreet authors. We'll announce the winner later this week. But you can't win if you don't give. We want to thank our sponsors for making this event possible and, of course, our wonderful host committee. Thank you so much. And now, here's our first GrubStreet performer of the evening, Hassan Sharif.
The first class I ever took at GrubStreet was a poetry class on a nice cold Saturday morning. I want to say it was in December. Before it was more of writing is just something you either do in school or you do once on your free time because it's just a moment of inspiration. But now I see writing definitely more as a process as opposed to years ago when writing was just my little safe space and almost something I did in solitary. The GrubStreet community is a very loving and accepting community of writers. Everyone's always been really open arms, even from my first day. It's just a very safe space to share your ideas, especially for someone like me, because that was the first time I'd ever had to really open up creatively. Walls. These walls, they say when your hand brushes against the stones, you can feel them. Now I know what I felt. The chilled ocean breeze kept at bay by the fort's walls, causing us to char in the confinement of the castle. Sweat beaded my forehead as we walked along them, the towering pale masses that were daunted over me, doubling in size as I approached. My curious palms slide from stone to stone, my ancestors' presence, a series of needles in my fingertips. I flinched for a moment. My hand tingled, boiling to the touch. I tried to shake it off and keep walking, brushed my hand off on my side, but now I hear them. Voices echoing for hundreds of years, silent sermons drifting through a dormant mind. Do you hear them? The cries of women torn from weeping children before disappearing over the horizons. The cries of men, once great oaks, rosewood, turned to stumps of muscle and bone. Do you hear them? The children who will know no innocence, dragged away from their homes, forced to walk on the hot embers of a past life now burning beneath them. Do you hear them? Tens, hundreds, thousands of languages, all brewing in the cauldron of hatred. A cauldron that's churned by burning hands, hands that know no limits, no boundaries, violently wrapping around anything they can grip, to silence the cries of a million souls. The voices combined to a single scream, the sound of it so deafening that we mistake it for silence. Do you hear it? When these walls cry out a story of everlasting pain, you may hear it, but will you listen? Thank you.
This is the upstairs where all the writers write and the classes are taught, and oh my goodness, there are writers writing right now. Let's see what they're working on. Don't worry, Chris, it's part of the creative process. It almost always works out, but good luck with that.
I think what gives me joy about writing is the act of discovery in and of itself. It's not something that you can really plan before you do it, and so it's a constant process of discovering your voice and what you want to say and what your perspective is.
Something about writing that brings me joy is unpacking what it means to be human. Getting it all down, the good, the bad, the joyful, the ugly.
Anybody can do it. At any time, they can pick up a pencil, a piece of paper, and find themselves.
Why should people support GrubStreet? I think it's really important to have a space to not only work on your craft, but to also learn from each other, to build community.
Writing is a process that you do alone, but GrubStreet says it doesn't have to be lonely. You're accepted here, and we want to hear your story.
We just try to bring everybody into the conversation, everyone who cares about their writing, and bring them into what's happening in the publishing world, what's happening in the literary world, and give them the confidence to know what they can bring to that conversation as well.
It's one of the few places that anybody belongs, anyone is welcome.
When writers are supported and when writers can find one another and can hone and share their stories, we all learn greater compassion for one another, we all become more connected.
By far the best writing community I've ever been a part of. My guilty, not guilty pleasure is probably when I read the entire Twilight series during my second trimester of pregnancy. I have no shame in that.
Well, I don't really think there are guilty pleasures. I think there's only pleasures, but with that said, crime fiction.
So my guilty pleasure in writing and reading is fan fiction. It was the first time that a light bulb went off and I thought, maybe I can do this too, like I can do this and there are people who would want to read this.
I don't really believe in guilty pleasures when it comes to reading, but that being said, Twilight, Team Edward.
My guilty pleasure reading is probably YA romance novels, which I don't tell that many people, but I think another thing that people aren't surprised if they know me.
What's not satisfying about them? You have teenage romance and vampires.
Anybody that's Team Jacob is wrong. It's just not canon.
I am here in the brand new podcast studio. I can smell the paint. Also, I'm a professional podcaster and I don't have a podcast studio. Look at this equipment. Do you know what kind of opportunities this is going to open up for the community here at Grub? Writers are going to be encouraged to share their voices in so many different ways now. Podcasts, audiobooks, shows. This isn't just going to open up so many creative opportunities, this will open up teaching opportunities. Who knows what is going to go on here? I can't wait to see. I mean, I think I'm going to live here. And now our final reader, Boyah Farah, whose debut memoir, America Made Me a Black Man, comes out this fall.
It was probably 10 years ago. The first essay that I ever wrote, I was in Bedford High School, and I remember my teacher telling me that, hey, you're a writer. But at the time, there was no way for me to capture those words and make them mine, because the language itself didn't really belong to me. English was not mine. It didn't really belong to me. I was learning it. I'm still learning it. And it is only that as I got older and made the language mine, I wasn't sure if I'm a writer, but I always wrote things down when I get upset. So I joined GrubStreet, first class, and it did something to me. Using my life, you know, I feel like I've lived so many lives. War, a life in Somalia as a child in the valley, a life in Somalia during the war, a life in Somalia in a refugee camp, a life in America as first as an American, second as a black man in America, because America told me these are who I am. Those are many lives within me that what GrubStreet made me realize is I have a lot to say. There's a lot of stories within me that I can tell. Right now, I'm telling you how incredibly powerful GrubStreet is. This is the year of tragedy, tears and tragedy. And the way to heal one another is to write and to tell our stories. It is GrubStreet that took the story out of me and into the pages. And if you're enjoying anything that I write, it's people like GrubStreet who believed in me, told me I'm a writer, and the rest was mine. This is with gratitude that I tell this story. And I'm glad my first book will be out soon. I'm gonna be paying forward for all the people that believe in me, from when I came to this country to now, to the future. Chapter 1. It's a cold, snowing evening in Boston. Sleep does not come to bless me with relief. Relentless insomnia burns inside of me from watching George Floyd get lynched by 4 Minnesota police officers. His dying words haunts me. I am George. I have a black skin. As the night turned into morning, these people, cops, former co-workers, all of those who call themselves white, surround me, prowl around inside of me, daily demons inflicted from within. I cannot entangle myself. Night after night, my eyes refuse to listen. They won't close long enough to allow me a minute's rest. My suffering obeys its own law. There is no break for my mind. It gulps forward relentlessly. My eyes move against me because I am on the run. I have to keep running from those racist goals. Something keeps dragging me backward, tightening its grip on my heart that in the middle of the night, in the daylight, I can name them. I know who they are, and often find them forced to interact with them. I am tired. My body hurts. My legs, my back. And now this morning, it is my neck, my stomach, everything hurts. I'm even losing my hair. I'm alive, but barely. To die is one thing, but to be torn apart and dismembered by a constant fear is something else. The day is falling into a night again. Streetlights are beginning to illuminate the road. Driving on the highway seems to ease the hurt inside. I have no particular plan. I just want freedom, to feel the wheels under me rolling. It has been some months since George Floyd was executed. Driving while black at this particular moment is not a natural act. I am fully aware that I'm in a genuine danger. I feel trapped in the maze of my obsessive thoughts. So I get off the highway and cruise along through small-town America. In my rearview mirror, I notice a police vehicle, and without really thinking about it, my hand reached down to adjust my seatbelt. I wanted to make sure it's fastened. I know instinctively that I'm about to be pulled over. I steer myself. Every cell of my body is getting ready. Not sure, he follows me through a traffic light. As the light turned green, I don't have a minute to press down on the accelerator before he hits his siren. It wails insanely loud. As calm as I can, I signal that I'm about to pull over to the side. Then I came to a complete stop. A white policeman steps out. He ambles up the driver's seat on my car. Standing aggressively, he bores the pinpoint of his eyes into me with a penetrating, peddler's gaze. License and registration, he demands. His words carry the weight of my body in his hands. I am alone. I feel alone in America because I know the moral danger. Sorry, officer, I say, complying totally and trying not to give him an excuse to escalate. I reach for my wallet. His hand sits on his pistol. His eyes seem to laser through my being, alert to any so-called danger to move on my part. I'm so sorry, I said. My eyes in turn focus on him, conscious of his every move, as he's conscious of mine. He stands there motionless. Finally, I offer him my license. I think that was better than before, maybe.
I was trying to multitask as I watched those wonderful readings, but I had to keep stopping because they were so good, weren't they? Thank you, Boyah, Hassan, for being with us tonight and sharing your brilliant work. It's hard to capture the full range of voices at GrubStreet in 3 readings, but you did an incredible job representing the depth and power of this rich community of storytellers. Thank you so very much for being with us tonight. And wow, tonight, there is a lot to celebrate. For starters, this brand new smashing 13,000 square foot center. I hope you've enjoyed the glimpses of it you've been able to see tonight. As someone who was there in the early days, when we were headquartered at a tiny kitchen table in my old apartment, it's beyond anything I or any of us early grubbies could have dreamed or imagined. We first saw the empty space in January of 2018 and immediately threw our hat in the ring for the opportunity to build a lasting home. And now, 3 years later, through a global pandemic, we have done it. This belongs to you and to all of us. I want to thank our donors, from our earliest supporters to those who gave as recently as last week. Because of you, I'm thrilled to announce tonight that we have completed our 3-year, $8 million capital campaign. Additionally, because of the incredible hard work of so many generous volunteers who've given their time, their skills, their wisdom, we're finally ready to open our doors officially in October. I think this moment calls for a big toast. And guess what? Right here in the sink, I have found a glass of champagne. Here's to us, and the promise of the voices that will find their footing, The stories that will be told and shared, the lives that will be changed. You've given this gift, this home for writing and reading to one another. Thank you.
Cheers.
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 Cheers to GrubStreet and to Lit Up.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to Grub. Cheers.
And now I'm thrilled to hand things over to Ashley C. Ford. We're so excited to have her with us tonight to present this year's Grubby Award to the extraordinarily talented and generous Roxane Gay.
Good evening, Grubbies. I'm Ashley C. Ford, writer, podcaster, and I'm so honored to be with you tonight to present my dear friend Roxane Gay with the 2021 Grubby Award. Most of you know Roxane from her prolific and dynamic work on the page, which spans multiple genres and platforms. She's the author of at least 8 full-length books, including the literary novels Aiti and An Untamed State, 3 game-changing and best-selling collections of fiction and essays, Difficult Women, Bad Feminists, and Hunger, a memoir of my body, a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award, and dozens of incredible stories ranging from heist thrillers to mysteries to an illustrated Wakandan love story. She's the editor of the Best American Short Stories 2018 and the selected works of Audre Lorde, the co-founder of Pank, the founding essays editor of The Rumpus, the publisher of Tiny Hardcore Press, a contributing opinion editor at the New York Times, and a 2018 Guggenheim Fellow. She publishes an essential bi-monthly newsletter called The Audacity, has just launched her own imprint, Roxane Gay Books, at Grove Atlantic, and has over 850,000 Twitter followers who wait on her every tweet. It's no exaggeration to say that of all of this and more, Roxane Gay is one of the most significant literary figures of our generation and one of the most insightful and trusted thought leaders and cultural critics of our time. That's super impressive, right? But from what I understand, such literary success and influence alone do not get you a Grubby Award. You must meet all 3 of the award's strict criteria: artistry, generosity, and being awesome. In other words, you must exemplify the spirit of inclusiveness, goodwill, forward-thinking, candor, humility, and play at the core of GrubStreet's mission and identity. Described by LitHub and many others as a champion of other writers, Roxane Gay occupies a singular place in contemporary society as both a passionate, bold, and uncompromising advocate for systemic, political, and cultural change, and an unpretentious, witty, and often fun voice that tweets about her crush on Channing Tatum and her appreciation of the Fast and Furious franchises, which I promise Roxane I'll watch one day. Action-wise, she walks the walk, as when in 2017 she pulled one of her forthcoming books from her publisher after they signed a noted bigot. This action emboldened other writers to do the same. Just a few months ago in the New York Times, she turned her critical lens on social media itself, interrogating her once beloved medium as a blunt force, a bunch of hammers in search of nails, and decrying the meanness and lack of nuance that has come to define its ethos. With everything she does, and always in her humble, self-implicating, generative, and honest way, Roxane inspires all of us to be better versions of ourselves. And in her dedication to her most recent job as publisher and editor of Roxane Gay Books, she is literally launching and nurturing the careers of new and emerging authors, particularly queer authors and authors of color, like me, with and without agents. Personally, I've seen firsthand how committed Roxane is and how deeply she believes in the power of books to change the world, how deeply she believed in me and my book and my power to change the world, which I hope I'm living up to. I so wish I could be there to hand Roxane the Grubby Award, but I'm very much looking forward to hearing her remarks and celebrating her along with the community at GrubStreet. Congratulations again, Roxane. If anybody's worthy of it, you are.
Hello, everyone. Having my work recognized by creative peers is really one of the greatest gifts of my career. And so first, I wanted to thank all of you at GrubStreet for this Grubby Award. Knowing that you bestow this award to someone who embodies generosity, vision, and being awesome is incredibly flattering. I feel seen, I feel appreciated, and I'm incredibly grateful. Like most writers, I'm always trying to balance crushingly low self-esteem and the belief that I have the right to use my voice as much as anyone else. And I love writing. I always have. I love that writing is a form of creative expression open to absolutely anyone who is willing to sit down and follow their imagination wherever it leads them. But sometimes we need some help with the work of writing, whether it's reassurance or mentorship and guidance or instruction on how to craft compelling dialogue or build a rich sense of place or how to write complex characters that we want to follow across the length of a novel. Most of us aren't going to get an MFA in creative writing. We are nurses and insurance sales reps and baristas and construction workers and waiters and teachers and lawyers. We write in stolen pockets of time while doing our jobs and raising families and, once in a while trying to get some sleep. And a lot of us wonder, when will we be able to call ourselves a writer? Thank goodness for places like GrubStreet that opens its doors to all writers across genres and of all ages. Thank goodness for GrubStreet, which offers writing workshops and classes and a robust programming so that we can all be part of a writing community, so we can all be reminded of the power of words and the joy of writing. As you might imagine, I am often asked to offer advice for aspiring writers. In truth, I try to stay away from writing advice, which is a bit strange given that right now I'm finishing up my next book. And yes, it is, you guessed it, a book of writing advice. The thing is that every writer offers writing advice, but really what they're doing is just sharing what works for them. It's all incredibly subjective. Nonetheless, people still want some advice, even when I explain how personal it can all be. So here are 15 incredibly arbitrary pieces of writing advice, and so do with them what you may. This is a pet peeve of mine, so never start a prose with dialogue. It invites the reader into a conversation for which they have no context. You don't have to write every day or even every week or month, but you do have to write consistently to grow as a writer. To that end, no one is going to take you seriously as a writer until you take yourself seriously as a writer. When you make a commitment to yourself to write, keep that commitment. It is okay to make your writing a priority as much as you make anything else in your life a priority. There is a difference between writing and publishing. It's important when you sell a book to prepare yourself to manage and negotiate the business of being a writer. Until then, just focus on the writing. Walk before you run. When I am doing a final polish on my work, I try to take out all of the unnecessary words that are simply filler and doing nothing to strengthen the writing. I am especially invested in taking out as many superfluous instances of that as possible. Reading your work aloud as you revise is incredibly useful in finding the words that may not work, in finding sentence and paragraph structures that aren't serving you, in sussing out whether or not the ideas that you're putting forward in your work are actually as sound as you think they are. Any so-called writing rule can be broken, but you want to be sure that you're breaking that rule for a good reason and not just for the sake of breaking something. Reading is the most important thing you can do as a writer. It's the most important instruction you will ever have. So read The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. Read Zammy, a new spelling of my name by Audre Lorde. Read The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. Read Beloved by Toni Morrison. Read N.W. by Zadie Smith. Read Salvage the Bones by Jessamine Ward. Read A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mistry. Read A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Writers love creating stories or essays as numbered lists, but often the piece would read the same with or without the numbers. So form demands function. If you want to impose a formal device on your work, be clear on the purpose for doing so. And if you can't identify a purpose, it might be time to rethink your approach. This is a secret, but it's okay to enjoy writing. There is no rule that says that you have to be tormented or tortured to be a good writer, though there's nothing wrong if you are either of those things. If you're interested in writing in multiple genres, do it. It has been the just greatest pleasure to write across genres. There are always going to be learning curves, but narrative is narrative, whether it's fiction or nonfiction or comics or screenplays. Now, poets, you are the one genre I don't engage in, but also you can do that too. If you only want to write in one genre, that's also fine. Most great authors write the same story over and over and over in different and memorable ways. Editors, good editors, care deeply about your work, and when they give you feedback, they're only trying to help you write your best work. So trust your editors. Let them help you. While it's important to revise and reimagine your work, While it's important to revise and reimagine your work and take constructive criticism as a blessing rather than a curse, it's also okay to stand your ground when you disagree with feedback. You know your work better than anyone. Trust your instincts so long as you're doing so in service of the work rather than your ego. And sometimes it takes a lot of time to figure out where that line is. Don't let people with limited imaginations define what is possible for you as a writer. Absolutely everything is possible, and it's so important to believe that. Last but certainly not least, when you are lucky enough to win an award like the Grubby from a writing community as genuine and generous as GrubStreet, embrace the moment. It is one of the most unexpected pleasures, and it means the world to me. So thank you once more. And support GrubStreet and other organizations like it wherever you may be. Thank you and good evening.
I also need to thank you for one more thing, and that is for making sure, with your ongoing support and commitment, that this new center lives up to its promise. The promise and the necessity of more racial equity and more expansive inclusion of all kinds. Your support for Lit Up Tonight is about securing that future, making sure it's a welcoming place of belonging and bold artistry for our widest community of writers and readers. Everything you've done tonight, from hosting to giving to sponsoring to buying tickets, is so important to our future. Your support allows us to do 3 really crucial things. First, to expand networking and mentorship for our Boston Writers of Color group, which is now 2,000 members strong. Second, to continue our new teaching fellowships, which provide support to talented Black writer educators who are also helping us deepen our curriculum at GrubStreet. And third, to increase financial aid for every writer who needs it, both teens and adults, so that we can ensure equitable access to classes, the Muse Conference, consulting, and mentorship. If you haven't donated yet to sustain this future, please contribute now on our Lit Up page. And don't forget about our online auction. It has the most exciting writerly experiences and fun opportunities around, so check it out. Thank you again for believing in our vision and in the promise of creative writing to enrich our lives, bring people together, and change the world.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight to celebrate our new space. What do you think? Look at this. This is where the bookstore is going to be. It might look empty now. We cannot wait for you to join us to fill it up. And all of this is thanks to your generosity. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now I get to celebrate. Seriously? We'll see you soon.